Welcome back to the channel. This is Tartarian Explorer here. Today I have an exciting interview with a good friend of mine. She's an inner and outer world architect. I'm introducing Essie. All right, here she is, and we're going to talk all things Tartaria. How are you doing today, Essie?
Good. How are you doing?
Oh, excellent. So excited for today's talk.
I'm so pumped.
Okay. So when we messaged earlier, you mentioned you gave this really amazing tagline. I'm just going to read it because it sounded so good when I just spoke it out loud.
Absolutely.
Deconstructing of Historical Falsehood, Untangling Historical Lies, and activating the remembrance and living memory of our true history. So we, in this world, we've been lied to about so many things, and it goes so deep. And it's like, at this point in evolution, it's not about like getting upset or getting frustrated. It's like actually just pointing out the lies and kind of evolving our consciousness and getting excited about because of all these things we've been lied to about. Imagine what cool stuff there is, on the other side of it,
Mm-hmm.
And when you start looking into the history of the buildings and all the world, what's the truth of it? It's so amazing. It's like my favorite quote is the truth is stranger than fiction.
Mm-hmm.
So, but first, I want you to tell me about yourself a little bit. Tell me about the work you do, and you can speak about your what you
so
do.
My work, what it's kind of evolved into is I really work with blueprints, right? And activating blueprints, whether it's internal or outer world. So the internal blueprints of people's inner narratives, I do one-to-one sessions with that to help them, right, align with their true expression, their true blueprint, right? And then also what my work is really evolving into is societal redesign and civilizational kind of design patterns, right? Because right now our entire society is structured based on falsehood, right? It's all based on lies, and those memories are still inside of us, right? Of these memories of Tartaria, Atlantis, all of these ancient design patterns are coming back, right? And we're rebuilding. So my work really focuses on both inner world and outer world and all of these blueprints and how they harmonize together. So how we create a cohesive society based on structuring the blueprints internally and structuring the blueprints externally, right? I think that was a good overview. So architect, I would say, would be my main work and what it's really evolving into.
Okay, give me 1 second. I'm just trying to get the live up, so in case people have questions, they can give me a second
absolutely.
Here.
I want to mention something too while you're doing that. So, right, a good question is why is it important to deconstruct these lies, right? So truth is actually living memory, right? Light, eternal light, is living memory. It's within our cells, within our DNA. All of our history is compressed into our DNA, right? So it's they're just dormant, right? We've all forgotten our true history and we've been lied to, right? So the more that we deconstruct and identify these lies, we really create these openings, right, in our psyche, right? That the true light within ourselves and within the living memory, right, can reactivate. So when we deconstruct these lies, this is why it's important to know what the lies are, right? Because then we make room for the true memories to come back online, our true history to come to life.
Yes, and absolutely, I love what you just said. Yeah,
it's all within us. It's when you start to access higher consciousness, you can be downloaded with it, right, from the God stream directly, and it can reactivate within your cells, right? Because all of that is compressed within our DNA. All of our history has those imprints of these past civilizations, right? And those memories we've just forgotten because our minds and our beings are so full of these lies, right?
Yes.
So when we start to deconstruct that, the memory can come back online.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? It's not about, we're not discovering something new, actually. I say that sometimes in my videos and my work, but we're actually uncovering what's already the truth. We're just peeling back the layers of the illusion, of like what's the real, like, it's like kind of, it's almost unintuitive or counterintuitive to what people would normally think, like, oh, we're trying to like dig for the truth, but it's like we're just exposing what was being like covered by a bunch of like agendas and like falsities.
Exactly. Well, when you start to peel it back like the onion, right, the truth is the light that's in the middle. So you start to peel all these layers that are false. The truth is always there. The light, the memories are always there, right? They're like, we just have to access them. Yeah. And then it turns into, right, once we all have our memories kind of more online, more restored, which is what's kind of happening collectively, then we're able to build with that light, right? Then we're able to really reconstruct society with these new civilizational design patterns through having our memories awakened, right? So it's like, that's kind of the sequence of how this is going to start to go collectively.
Yes, and I like how you said it's an awakening, because it really is like the move. Like it can be like almost daunting for like people to get into this whole field of like what I'm about to talk about in a second, and how like it can be really tough to like for an outsider, for a normal person to like really grasp or even want to get into this subject.
Yeah.
But it's not about logic. It's really just it's an awakening that's happening, and I never thought I would get into like this. Didn't like come to like it came to me. It's not something I searched for, in a sense, like we're searching for truth, but we're not. It just, once you know, it's just like it's like an evolving of consciousness over time, and it's just we can stop like categorizing in our mind in that way of like, oh, the way we think about it. It really is just a slow evolution. And
well, it's like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Some people are ready for it, some people aren't, and I'm like past the point of like worrying about what people think and all this stuff. It's just like, all right, this is what I'm here to share, and this is what, like, it's probably like a very small percentage of people that are really starting to get this, but it's growing every day, and like that's all it is. And
so basically, civilizationally, right, if we think about this from like the broader terms, like what you're describing, right, is like a light inside of you that essentially got turned on. The more light and brightness, right, which is the soul, so like the more of that we all start to access, that impacts the people around us. They don't even consciously know that they're being like impacted by the light, right, of people who have started to restore memory. I call awakening like the restoration of memory, right? So like it starts to ripple, and people start to ask questions. People start to be interested in topics that they never would have thought about. So it starts to bypass the conscious mind. So like in my work, I've stopped even remotely categorizing people as like, because it's like eventually the entire society will be awakened, and it will be because of the bright lighthouses of each of us, right, who are activating that memory restoration, that then it ripples out, and they can't help to start to awaken, to ask questions, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry, I know that was like a long tangent.
Oh, no, that's great. Okay, so I have a little slideshow, and then we're gonna kind of piggyback on some ideas here about. And I think we talked about earlier. We were saying how like some of this stuff is like, okay, I'm gonna show some lies that have been told by history, and maybe I was hoping you could interject and tell, like, how does this like impact us? Like, what is the actual practicality of this? Okay, that's a lie, but what is that like? Some people say like, okay, well, why are they lying? Why does that matter? I'm like, well, I'm hoping that's why we have other people to discuss this kind of stuff. It's like there is kind of some, I don't know how to answer that properly. Sometimes people ask me that. I'm like, well, I just want to get to the bottom of the truth. But I think you might have some insight here to help with this.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can definitely get to that, because it has a huge impact on the psyche.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So first, I just want to mention that I love to, my passion is like traveling to the actual sites and then doing like YouTube videos and like kind of showing these kind of places. And to me, that's like the most fun thing, is like actually going to the locations. And so I've been to, like, I look for Tartarian, so-called Tartarian, but it's just a keyword. It's not, we'll get into that too. But I look for these buildings all over in the US, Canada, Canary Islands, India, Sri Lanka, Poland, Hungary, Austria, Czech Republic, Germany, Italy, Greece, Scotland, Ireland. The whole world is like, this is a worldwide this is a worldwide thing that went on. This is not an isolated thing. This is looking for buildings from the past that are in every country. So, and they're all the same style, and we'll get into that what that style is exactly and what that means. And I'm going to go to Cuba and Mexico and continue to document this kind of stuff. So that's so exciting for me, to do this, and I hope people can catch along and start watching, and we can all discuss. It's not about just me exploring; it's actually discussing with like people like you and sharing and like getting excited together and uncovering,
collaborating. Yeah.
Yes, collaborating. Yeah. So, all right, let me share my screen here. All right. So the first thing is we got these things called the World's Fairs. And these were big, huge, giant fairs that went on in the world. And here's where some of the lies come in. And you can kind of uncover some of the, like, by using like common sense and just like kind of like using logic, questioning whether this is what they're telling us is accurate, the historical narrative. So this is the St. Louis World's Fair. And so this is 1,200 acres in St. Louis at the Forest Park. It included 1,500 buildings. Let me see if I can see how beautiful this stuff is. Let me go slower so I don't. So this was, it had 20 million visitors, right? And it was only, the fair only opened for April 30th, 1904, and closed in December 1st, 1904. So what they're telling us is that this place was built just for this one little year, like half of a year, not even half a year of this fair. And then almost everything was demolished. Now, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like, it really doesn't. Like, if you look at how beautiful it is and how we build today, the detail on some of these buildings is absolutely incredible. And this is like the older style of architecture. And this is just one of the many fairs. So let's see. We had the Exhibition Universelle. That's the one in Paris. If you look at some of the pictures there. So this same story here. The fair was only for about a half of a year, and many of those buildings were destroyed right after the fair. So it's just like, if you just look at some of this stuff, the level of detail. Oh, this one kind of went up for a second. It's got such a detailed picture. I gotta load it. If you just look at the detail of like the buildings, it just begs the question, like, why were they building it so quick and then taking it down right away? Like, look at that type of architecture right there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, and this is supposed to be like during hearse and buggy. So it's like, I mean, I just say the same thing. Like, I've been saying this on my channel a lot, and like a lot of YouTube channels are now talking about this. It's not really anything new to talk about. It's just kind of getting into our mindset that our historical narrative is inaccurate. Like, what we've been taught in school is incorrect. Like, they had all these electricity on that time. Like, this was supposedly when electricity was like first invented, right? And they built all this stuff right when it was just invented, right? And the building style is like, there's a whole different style to it, with the monuments, the arches, and not to mention, like, who is this population that are there? Like, what, there's a common theme in the Tartaria research is that it's kind of assumed that there was a reset period.
Mm-hmm.
And these are newer people that came in. Like, this population doesn't have like a lineage that goes back too far. We don't know where they came from. They appeared onto the scene. We appeared, like our grandparents and stuff kind of just appeared at some point. We don't really know. Like, our history was like there was a wipeout period, so all the wars recently, like World War I, World War II, they were basically a period of changeover to the new like history that was just a period of time where they just wiped out everything and changed our history. And so we're kind of like, unless we start remembering, like we're talking about these remembering, we're lost in history, we're lost in time until we start to really like find out that maybe there's different things in the past than we thought, so many of these things, like the way they built it, with all the beautiful detailed work, it's just so incredible to look at. If you just see the colors, and we're lucky we have color photos of this stuff.
Wait, so can I chime in with something really quick?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So one thing that just came to me, and then I want to get in more to like the resets and the lies and like what they're covering up with all this stuff. But so I want you guys to really think about like, and this is one of the things that I'm going to start teaching about is like, okay, like masculine principle is linear, right? So you think of a square, right? Like the buildings we look at, they're all masculine in nature, right? When you see a dome like that, it's either a healing center, like its origins was either a healing center or it was an energy center that connected directly to the God stream. Because the 13th dimension is the feminine, okay? Like the primal sound field, which is like basically the source of like where all 12 dimensions of light like all come from, right? And like to connect to the 13th dimension, like the source, is how those domes operated. So they operated as literal healing centers. So like an arc, when you see an arc like that, it's signifying to your mind feminine, right? So it's connecting to the source, literally plugging in to the full source. So like when we see domed buildings, like a lot of churches, a lot of these places, they're hiding that those places were, like I said, they were either healing centers or they were literally energy conduits where the energy of the God stream like came through. So those domed buildings were really like hijacked, right? And they were hidden from us, right? And they put in like religion and all of these things into these ancient buildings, hiding the truth of what they really were. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
yes, absolutely.
It's a big deal when we see like those domed structures. And I mean like pyramids too, because pyramids like direct to the God stream. But like when you really see the dome is when you know that it's connecting to the source. Like pyramids in my knowing are almost like conductors, but they're not like the conduit, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So like domed buildings are really like the conduit.
Here's an example of a really impressive dome building with a gold on top. This is the Connecticut State Capitol. And it's like, it's a dome up there. Mm-hmm. It's got this gold color. It's actually, I'm not color, I mean, actual gold. And let me see if I can find the inside of it. Inside is looking up at it. State Capitol Dome. I've been inside this building and it's absolutely inside. Let me see here. I mean, what do you think about that right there? That's where it's looking up into the dome.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, not to mention, it looks like a portal, a teleportation, like some kind of like ascending up into that place.
That's exactly, those domes operate almost like portals.
Yeah.
That's pretty much how I would describe it. Yeah.
I mean, the rotunda of the Connecticut State Capitol in Hartford is adorned by colorful stenciling and stained glass that becomes vibrant when the sun shines through the dome. Yeah. At the base is an 8-pointed star, a motif also seen in the dome's stone, wood, and chandelier. Next to this is a winged woman holding a wreath. The original was an 18-foot bronze statue called the Genius of Connecticut. It is sat atop the dome until it was melted down for ammunition during World War II. That's a whole nother story of like how they like. I was watching this one guy talk about this recently. I think you know him. It's like a really good, popular YouTuber guy, and he was like, "Yeah, they made this fake story about how they needed to use all this beautiful stuff for ammunition, like as if they couldn't make other ammunition out of other stuff. They had to take the beautiful stuff and turn it in. No, they were taking it down because it was part of the old world, and they were, it's just crazy. Like they make an excuse for it, like, oh, we really desperately needed ammo. It's like, no, you did not. Like that's.
Well, so this gets into like, right. Hold on, I have a little. So right, like when they changed the history, right? They couldn't like wipe out everything because they I don't like when people say like they can't create, because they definitely can be a little creative, but they can't create full-blown civilizational patterns, is what I'll say. So like basically what they did, right? Like they hijacked the ancient buildings and the ancient technologies. They couldn't wipe out everything, because then like they couldn't hide the fact that they did that. You know what I mean? So instead what they did was manipulate our reality, because right, like when we see these buildings, when we see these architectures, we resonate with them at a subconscious level because they're our history, right? But then they give us a false history, which then programs us with like lies, right? So it's almost like this master gaslighting and master manipulation of our own history. You know what I mean? Like they could never have destroyed those buildings, because then they would have nothing to work with to lie to us. They basically inverted and hijacked, right, all of these things, and like that's essentially what they've done, you know. And they try to make it seem like we've never been technologically advanced, like, you know, Apple and all this stuff that's coming out now is like the most technologically advanced we've been, and it's just a lie. Like everything that they've stolen from, I mean, you know this and we've talked about this, but like it's all Atlantean in nature. They've taken everything that has Atlantean roots and they've hijacked all of it, right? And they've done these like numerous resets. So like it's not even just one time that we've done reset.
I don't think so either.
Numerous times. And during Tartaria is where it gets really fascinating, because in my knowing, people started to really wake up from like a reset, and they started to build these buildings again. And I mean, that gets into like, hold on, I want to go into how the buildings are built, because it's not what we think. But basically people started to awaken and hold higher states of consciousness during the Tartarian culture, and they started to remember their Atlantean roots, which obviously it turned into their own culture, right? Tartaria turned into its own thing, which is beautiful, but the roots were based on our true history of Atlantean, right? And so then what did they do? They wiped out Tartaria, right? And they did another reset, and we see evidence of that with all the mud floods, right? We see evidence of that in some of the historical books, right? But like, we also have to know that, which I think is one of the hardest things for people that are just coming into this knowledge, that like basically everything we learn in school, everything is a lie. Everything is designed to like lower our consciousness, right? And like the impact, you were asking me earlier about like what's the impact of lies? Like why is it a big deal if somebody lies to us? It's a huge deal, because when you tell somebody a lie, and especially an entire civilization, right, about like who they are, you are essentially inducing them into a mass hallucination, right? Because if people start to believe, oh, we're on a spinning globe, oh, NASA's real, right? Those are hallucinations. They're delusions. They're not real. You know what I mean? And so then you have an entire society. Truth is like a pillar, right? It's a foundation that you can build on. It's like solid, right? You can't shake truth. It's unshakable. So when they tell us lies, we're building our entire psyches, our entire society, right, on quicksand. We're building it on lies. And therefore, we can't even really build anything, number one, because when you induce lies, you are deliberately separating from the God stream, because the God stream is truth. The soul is truth. So if we're being told the time we're 5 years old, right, growing up, all these lies, that is purposely fragmenting us from truth, right, from our history, from everything. It's fragmenting us into this mass hallucination that is so, like, you know how there's like crystal, right? When you have false programming, it becomes like calcification. It becomes this like hardened, like if you think about like a tumor, right? It's like a hardened substance. That's kind of what happens to the psyche when it's induced into these lies, right? And so that's why it's so hard, because people want to hold on to lies. They want to hold on to, you know, that this is the most technologically advanced we've ever been. They want to hold on to the lies that the government's trying to help us, because there's no solid ground of truth that they have other than what they've been programmed with, which is all lies. And in order to start to deconstruct those lies, eventually everybody comes face to face with the fact, like, oh my God, then what is the truth?
Mm.
And that a lot of people don't want to face, because that is like, we have to start rebuilding from ground zero, right? Think about like this, like an example would be somebody that stays in a relationship, right? And like ignores their spouse cheating or like doing something like that, right? They're continuously choosing denial because it's harder than facing the truth and like leaving and confronting everything in that scenario. You know what I mean? This is why people stay with these lies of NASA, of the government, of history, because it's too confronting. And if you start to pull at those threads, it'll pull down that there's no base structure. There's no inner structure, right? There's no truth that they've ever been taught. And that is a scary thing for a lot of people. But when we start to do it gently and people start to ask questions and curiosity and unity, they feel safer to explore and to deconstruct. But like, I think where a lot of people who are like truthers, right, where it's like an inharmonic, I like to compare everything to, is it harmonic or is it inharmonic? It's inharmonic when you're trying to press somebody so hard with truth and be like, this is the truth, this is the truth, you must believe my truth. Because in order for anybody to change, in order for any falsehood to deconstruct, somebody has to first feel safe. They have to feel safe, harmony, and then they can start to deconstruct and like hear new, you know. Does that make sense? I know that was like a whole.
Yes, beautiful. That's a really great breakdown of like the fundamentals of coming to truth and the awakening, and
it's a mass hallucination, like what we're witnessing. Yeah.
And by the way, I have this little globe here, right? And it's the thing about the globe is this is just for fun. I know like it's just to look at, but it's not the real shape of the earth.
Not factual. But it's still like a symbol of like, it's still symbolic for you. It holds meaning.
Yeah. And it's like, I read, like, it could be a tricky, like, subject to get into, or understanding, like, okay, everything, so many lies. And then you're reading history books and you're like, well, all of it's a lie, but it's a context for like understanding. You still have to read the history book. Like, I'm still reading a book on Cuba. I'm like, but how much of this history is like inaccurate? I mean, in the past, but I'm still like, you still have to get an understanding of what it's like, layers of, you gotta, we understand things in multiple layers and contexts, even if some of it's a lie. And like, it gets so it's interesting. It's just a big rabbit hole to go down, but it's just,
Oh, sorry. I was going to tell you, I just got another example of like an impact of lies, right? Do you mind if I go into it?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So, okay, I want you guys to imagine like, right? Like if I was raising a child, right? And then that child displayed an interest in painting. Okay, right? They loved painting. And then I pressured that child, no, you can't love painting. You have to love finance, right? And I was like, you have to love finance, right? That child is going to grow up and they're going to forget that they loved painting. Their soul is going to repress it so much that it's literally going to form a type of like amnesia where they are going to, I mean, obviously it's still there, but like they're going to forget their gifts. They're going to forget naturally what they're good at. When you have an entire civilization that has been told from childhood, right? We're sent into conformity school. We forget everything about ourselves to go be like everybody else at school, right? You're inducing confusion. You're inducing collective amnesia. So we're not only in this mass like hallucination, but we're also in mass amnesia, right? Because those memories of our true history, we've all lost that. And what that does is it creates a society that is confused about who they are, where they come from, what their gifts are, their connection to God. And when you have an entire population that is confused, that is the easiest population to control, because you can tell them anything and they will believe anything. That's why the government, finance, like all of these systems work together to generate the most confusion possible, because that confusion, like, and that collective amnesia inhibits people connecting to the true self, right? And so when they're confused, then they're going to latch on to whatever the government says, right? Whatever the news says, because they're already confused. So the impact of lies, I would really say, like, amnesia and hallucination. So like those are and like it just messes with the psyche in, you know, irreparable ways. So basically, sum up everything I was saying, like, truth is so important. To speak truth to the people in your life, to speak truth to yourself, to speak truth to history, civilization, because without truth, can't build anything, can't create anything. You're inducing others into hallucination. You're inducing yourself into hallucination. Yeah, that's what I have to say about lies versus truth.
That is amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Something that just came up is it, like, why do you want to know this stuff? Is because, like, it's kind of a, like, the media likes to flip the script on, like, we're conspiracy theorists, we're dangerous to the democracy, they call it. But they're dangerous if they're making us trust the known liars. Like, if we're trusting people who are continuing to lie,
Yeah.
I think that's a danger to the, that's a very big danger. And but you know, you can say it that way, but and then, you know, I mean, not really danger, but just, yeah, it creates a psychological distortions, and
Yeah.
and that's not, yeah.
But the problem is, like, right, like, not even but like, so many people are really so confused and so traumatized that their body is not attuned to truth. So, right, they're not even able, when they hear something from the government, or they don't have that inner compass anymore. That's another part of when we've been lied to so much. We lose, like, people don't understand, like, psychic abilities, right? We have physical senses, right? Like, I can see this cup, I can see the candle, right? We have physical senses, like sight, smell, all these, but we have spiritual senses, our higher sensory abilities, and we've been cut off from them. Like, everybody has superpowers, right, that they don't know about, right? And we've been cut off from that ability. Like, in ancient times, you could listen to somebody talk and you could know by so many multi-sensory experiences, higher and physical senses, whether somebody was saying truth or not. People have been so cut off from that, you know, people listen to government officials and they can't tell that it's a lie, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, that's another bit too.
I want to share the screen for a little longer and
Yeah,
go over this real quick. It kind of has to tie in with what you were saying in a lot of ways. Okay, so we're looking at the Buffalo exhibition in around 1901, Pan American Exhibition. This is the Temple of Music, where supposedly McKinley was assassinated. So I'm going to go over this real quick. I'm just going to briefly go through this. So this is what the historical narrative is saying, and I'm going to tell you why it's kind of shady here. Okay. This is just some kind of news article on the time. Okay. The Expo's most notorious structure, designed by, that's the architect. Okay. It was also the shortest lived. The Temple of Music was the site of President McKinley's ill-fated meeting with assassin in September 1901. Okay. The Temple of Music's framework consisted of wooden members with cast iron connections and steel tension rods. The facade was made of staff, like the other buildings that were temporary. So just think temporary. Okay, so quotations temporary. Staff was invented in France circa 1876 and first used in buildings of the Paris Exhibition in 1878. It is composed of plaster of Paris molded around a fibrous jute cloth. These are mixed with water and cast into molds. The material is off-white and is usually about a half-inch thick and cast around the fibers to help prevent brittleness. Castings can resemble cut stone, rock face stone, or other type of masonry. Staff is impervious to water and is 1/10 the cost of construction with stone. The lower portions of the walls were often reinforced with concrete to provide added strength. So now that's what they're claiming. The thing about it is that if you look at enough of these buildings over time, it doesn't hold up its weight. And because now they're gonna say that in many of the I've looked through, we could sit here for hours and I could go through all the research to show you, but basically I've looked through many of the World's Fair's buildings, and they always say, okay, they're made temporarily, but then there's one that was made out of real materials that still stands today. You know what I mean? It's always one or two that were still there, but the rest were demolished. Like, okay, so get your story straight. Are you making all these buildings, or you know what I mean? It's like it's a mixed bag. It's like it's convoluted. It's like it's kind of hard to figure out. Like it's like they're trying to be tricky with the history here. I think they're lying.
Yeah.
And I think there's enough evidence to call BS on them. And so, for example, but look, first of all, even if this was made out of temporary materials, why would you destroy it after? Like, why would you just build this building right here and then destroy that right after the fair? Like, I mean, imagine the artistry, the beauty of it. Who wants to build this and destroy it? Like, I mean, nobody would do that. Nobody in their right mind would do that. Like, it's just crazy. Like, even if it was made out of so-called temporary materials, you know?
Yeah.
So,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
And then, real quick, this is the very end of it. It says, the Temple of Music was one of the most beautiful of the exhibition buildings. It was situated west of the central fountain of the Esplanade and south of the machinery and transportation building. The building was colored in light yellows with gold and red trimmings, and the panels in the dome were light blue, producing an extremely beautiful effect. And then it said, the temple provided an auditorium capable of seating 2,200 people and contained one of the largest pipe organs ever built in the United States. What do you know? Daily organs recitals were given by the most celebrated organists of this country in Canada. Okay, so therefore they had this beautiful pipe organ, and they also destroyed that too. So, you know, and one of the biggest ones at the time, you know, like, how does this make any sense? You know, I don't really. Pipe organs were part of the healing vibrations back in the past as well.
Yeah, I want to get into that. Yeah.
And they also tie into the bells, the old world bells. And so the bells were also resonations of healing frequencies. And today we don't really talk about the bells, and there's been like a big destruction of the bells. Like, I mean, you can find them now, obviously, but they're on the downswing. We're getting rid of bells. Like, we've been getting rid of the bells since the past. Yeah, we've been the amount of bells now are going down. The oldest ones. So, which is kind of sad, and I think that's intentional by whoever's doing it. So
yeah. So let me peel that.
Okay, go ahead
with what you were mentioning, because I'm so glad we went through that. But let's peel. I like to decode fully, right? When we're looking at things and just the nature of like what is the underlying blueprint, right? That we peel back even further. So when people are talking about bells and sound healing, right? Take it one back. How is that? Okay, so our entire reality is comprised of sound and light, right? The feminine and the masculine. The feminine is the primal sound field, right? So I want us to think of this as an encompassing womb that's literally where sound is. That's the cosmic womb. That's it is the 13th dimension, right? That's why everything is they make us afraid of the number 13, all of these things. And I can show you guys how we know for sure in what they're showing us, because they always show us truth that there's 12 dimensions, not just from my knowing, and I know it. There's 12 grades in school. Jesus had 12 disciples. There's 12 cranial nerves. Everything is based on 12 because there's 12 dimensions of light. 13 is all encompassing, is the feminine. So they tell us right out, it's in everything about how the number 12 is literally there's 12 dimensions of light. There's 12 stargates that they've hidden. But my point with all of that is the way that the feminine, and this is my own archetype that I've been coming into as well, is the feminine, think of it as a water, right? That creates this, there's sound. If you go underwater, you hear sound, right? If you put your ears underwater, you hear sound. That's the sound of the feminine. So before light emerges is sound. So like when people talk about like your words create reality, but they don't understand the actual mechanics of that, it's because sound creates light. From the feminine, the tonality of sound and the symbol that is imprinted on the waters of the feminine, that's the symbol that then gets constructed into light. So that's why everything in like reality works in archetypes and in symbol, like numbers, letters, it's all symbol, right? Because symbol is the imprint of the water. That's why water carries imprint that then turns into the 12 dimensions of light. So light is formed from the feminine waters, right? The sound field. So bells, sound healing, voice. People don't understand also that like, and this is what I do, right, in my sessions, like where I use my tonality to repattern and reharmonize and tune somebody's inner world, right? Because sound is what structures light. So bells, that's why they're hiding bells from us, right? That's why they're hiding these sound temples, all of our ancient history, because I'm telling you, Stephen, if people remembered how sound heals, our entire society would shift, I mean, like so fast, because sound is you're connecting directly in. And I have another evidentiary support of this. This is also why they won't let us close to dolphins, because any animal that like has sound, like if you think of a frog, a dolphin, they all have their own song, right? That song is directly connected to the feminine, to the cosmic womb. That's why they won't let us near dolphins, because dolphins would heal us, because that sonar, right? That sound from the dolphins, the ways that dolphins work with sound is what heals. It's directly from the cosmic womb. So it's why they hide all of this stuff about sound, right? Because another part of that is they've exiled the feminine, right? The feminine has been cast out, right? And so, yeah, another part of that exile of the feminine is because the feminine is sound. I know
Somebody
that was
said,
like
somebody said, Old World Micmac said, language/words can heal through sounds.
Yeah. Oh, and sorry, I'm going on so many tangents because I wanted to relay this back into the buildings as well. Those buildings, because you know how when you stand in front of those old buildings and you're like, how was this created? They were created, this is like wild when we think about it, like they were created through tonality and through resonance, like because all like, right, like tonality, which is not just sound. Tonality is your emotion, your intention, all of it mixed with sound is true tonality, right? So the buildings and all of these ancient architecture, they weren't built the way that we think they were built. Their blueprints and the way that they were structured were really, I mean, if you want to call it like sung into being, sound was what gave birth to light. So, and light is structure, right? We live in like, I mean, I don't like the term holographic because people get really like into that term with like holographic reality, but we do live in a reality that is encompassed with sound and light, right? So from a scientific perspective, it is holographic. So like it can be sung, right? Light can be created through sound, like literally birthed through sound. And like the resonance, what people in ancient times used to call resonance with the waves of nature, right? Like we're in resonance right now, right? Your waves are syncing and we're in coherence, right? This is resonance. In ancient times, people were in resonance with nature, with stone. So they could walk up to stone and sing something into stone and change the shape of stone. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, that totally resonates.
That's how they, yeah, because it was through tonality that all light formed. So the true living technology in ancient times was really tonality and voice. And so that's one of the key things that they've been hiding from us is like how these buildings were built. But we also know that, right, we've come so far out of what used to be resonance and now people call it frequency, which I don't really like that term. But it's just your wave. It's like your waveform. Is your waveform in coherence with nature? Right? And most people, because they're not in their true nature, they're not coherent with nature, right? So we don't have that almost super ability to shift nature in that way. But that's one of the things that they're hiding from us, right? Because the more that we all come into coherence, we can start to shift nature.
Well, we have so much power, and because what I'm getting from what you're saying is that you're hitting on, like, imagine if we had so much power, we just didn't know it. What could we do? And, because we actually, with our, like you said, tonality and energy and our intention, and through our actual physical vibrations coming out of us, that shapes reality. That shapes what's gonna come next. It's the creation process, and we're part of the creation process. And they want us to be consumerism oriented and not creator oriented.
They don't want us to we're creators.
Yeah, they want us to just consume, obey, follow, be a good debt slave. And just and there's a whole banking is a whole nother rabbit hole we both have shared. I mean, so, but I want to go through a little bit more slides before we and then we can I'll breeze through these real quick, and then we'll see where we're at from there. Okay. So this I thought was pretty interesting. This is actually inside the Temple of Music.
Yeah. And do you notice how it's called the Temple of Music and it's an arc?
Yeah. Look at this, like, beautiful stained glass up there.
They tell you a lot of times, and then they twist, right? So, like, they'll give some truth, but it'll be inverted.
Yeah. This just, like, looking at this, just 1 second it takes to look at it, you're mesmerized by it. Like, it's just it's part of the old world, and it's that certain architecture that was, representing the old world, and it's just amazing. I just get the chills almost looking at it, like, wow, that's just the beauty. Yeah. So this is also the Temple of Music right here, and the background is the horticulture building. These are all demolished after the fair, by the way. And then you see the little, like, fountain, the water. So all the fairs had the water too around them, canals, and they even had little boats you could take up to imagine if you were back in that time period. I mean, that's a whole different era we're talking about. This is like you said, there's been many resets, but this is right before the latest reset.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there's, like, beautiful waterways, the beautiful statues, and then beautiful buildings and electricity. What do you know? Lots of electricity. And even though it's just supposed to be just invented, and so I just love looking at these old pictures and just kind of seeing what I see. Let's see. Chicago World's Fair.
Oh, sorry. Can I interject with something not a thought? I just had a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Have you ever noticed how, like, on a lot of these photos, like, you can't see the sky?
Oh, the vanilla sky thing? Yeah.
Yes.
So that gets into, I didn't research it that much. I didn't go down a rabbit hole of that. That's I don't want to say it's not, I don't know either way. I'm not an expert on this, but it's a theory, which could be true. Which is basically that there was airships everywhere.
Yeah.
Wasn't that what we found? But yeah. And so there was airships. I know that. As to how many, there could have been a ton of airships, actually. And they were basically in the skies. And then in the pictures, they whitewashed the skies to get rid of, they don't want people to know that there was so many airships in the. Well, I definitely know about the Hindenburg being a false flag event. Yes, someone said free travel through Zeppelin. That's correct. Yeah. Free travel. Yeah, free travel and more. And I can highlight the comment. That's cool. So then, yeah, the airships is a whole topic. And actually, I'm right next to this town called Providence, Rhode Island. I'm like 20-minute drive from there. I drive up there, and there's this building there. And on the top of that building, there used to be a docking station for airships. What do you know? And this is like, and it's like it's like well known, but somewhat they didn't tell us in school. Why would they conveniently left out of the textbook? But you can look at the books and history books and see. But why didn't they want to talk about that too much? I don't know why, but maybe we do know why. But it's kind of funny. So this is the Chicago World's Fair. How do I get rid of the comment now? Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Hide. Let's see. Okay.
There we go.
So, look at some of the beautiful statues here. People sit on the steps along the Court of Honor Lagoon beneath the sculpture of a draft horse and teamster by sculptors. The large dome building is the administrative building with electricity building in the background. So, supposedly this is all made out of the same thing. Like this big Ferris wheel. The original Ferris wheel stands at Midway Pleasance with a diameter of 250 feet. So they said the wheels, 36 cars, were capable of holding 60 people each, giving passengers 2 forward revolutions, taking about 20 minutes. So I know this one's pretty interesting because we don't even build that way anymore. Like this is actually like bigger than any Ferris wheel we build today, and they destroyed it right after the fair. I mean, what? It's just kind of weird that they destroyed it. Here's some interesting little domes. There's the little thing I'm talking about where they can like go along and like kind of like what do you call it, like kind of like a canoe, but just like paddle along the fairgrounds. So this is inside one of the exhibitions. They were supposedly showing off all these technologies that are new, but what's possible is, they were kind of like the last hurrah, showing this was like time period where it's a mix of the old and the new. It's like a time period where things were being, this is like the last hurrah of all the cool old world stuff before it got demolished, because right after this it got demolished. So it's like, but it was like kind of probably a time when there was a fight between keeping this stuff around and then fight between taking away. And so if you look at these photos and just look around, it's just fascinating what you can find. Some of the details are absolutely like, imagine everything's like completely well crafted, and think of it this way too. At this time, people were extremely wealthy, according to like our Federal Reserve monetary system. This was like back when gold was a standard, and I'm pretty sure everyone was like filthy. Like most people, average citizens, were like incredibly rich because our dollar has valued so much when they got rid of gold, because it's like based on paper, which is nothing, So that back then, everyone was like, they could do all this stuff, and just people could like imagine that's your day, walk around this fair, like what a fun thing to do, So whether or not this is temporary or not, which I don't think it was, it's so beautiful. Like the bronze statue and everything, it's just incredible. Passengers ride an electric launch past the statues of the Republic. The statue, covered in gold leaf, was meant to represent the strength of the American Republic. It stood at the northeastern corner of the Great Basin, in front of the Grand Arch at the 550-foot long peristyle that allowed water access to Lake Michigan. So all this stuff was demolished. It's just so, the fairs are just a whole rabbit hole. It's just fun to look into, and even the history of the battleships too. That's a whole nother story. I'd probably not have time to get into that, but incredible stuff. There's the Ferris wheel. You can see how big it is compared to the people. And it's just awesome. I wish I could go there. Okay.
Yeah. I want to mention too, all of these structures, right, that you're showing us, which is amazing. They're all so beautiful, right? They all have this like beautiful, it's like they're like simplistic, but they're complex, and they have this beauty, right, with arches and all of these, it's just beauty. If we look at like today's culture, right, like our apartment buildings, the houses that they're building now, there's a reason, right? Everything they do, there's a purpose, there's an intention, right? And their intention is really to keep our consciousness and keep us from knowing who we are, right? Mm-hmm. That's also why they take the beauty out of these buildings, right? And they give us these big cities, like, that look boxy and that look like, because number one, it entraps the energy. Like when you live in an apartment building, right, that has like just like linear stuff and no arches, it entraps the energy as well. So it like, you know, but yeah, they've taken beauty out of everything because they know that when human beings see beauty and see harmony, they're more inspired, right? They feel safer. They actually want to build and like create things because we're inspired by beauty, right? Why do women love flowers? Why do like, you know, men love to look at beautiful women? But it's like we're inspired by beauty, by harmony. So they take society, right, and they turn it into this like not attractive buildings that are very boxy. They do that because it keeps us depressed, right? It keeps us in lowered states. That's why it's important when we're on this journey to start flooding our environment with beauty and like, you know, making our environment as beautiful as possible, spending as much time in nature, because those things rewire the psyche to be inspired by beauty, by, you know, pleasure, by seeing these pleasurable things, you know. So I think that's an important note about architecture. And I'm really excited for when we start really rebuilding and like see the beauty that we can create, you know what I mean? And like kind of return to our ancient roots.
Yes, yes. I mean, just look at all that. Like, that's just so, that image right there. Yeah, it's just, wow. Whether or not it's made out of this plaster, whatever they call it, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's still like, it's still incredible. They don't talk about this in like traditional textbook in school, which is like kind of weird. Like, why wouldn't you talk about this? This is like the coolest stuff, you know? Like, why would he not want to teach a kid about the most amazing architecture that existed on this, in the US? Yeah. Like,
they don't just about that, because then people would be asking questions and slowly memory would start to activate about Tartaria.
Yes, you're right. It would start to trigger too many things. Yeah. So really quick, I got a few more, and we're probably gonna call it there. I know we want. Okay. So real quick, the Great White Fleet. If you don't know about this one, it's kind of interesting. This was, so just reading Wikipedia, but I'll kind of chime in a little bit here. Was the popular nickname for the group of United States Navy battleships that completed a journey around the globe from 16th December 1907 to 22nd February 1909 by order of President Theodore Roosevelt. So the primary mission was to make friendly courtesy visits to numerous countries while displaying new U.S. naval power to the world. Roosevelt sought to demonstrate growing American military prowess and blue water naval capabilities. So basically, what they're kind of saying, read between the lines here, the U.S. had all these ships, and they went around the world, and they went to these ports, and they were basically bullying these countries into submission. Basically saying, okay, we have these big ships outside your port. What are you going to do about it? You know, we're basically taking over these countries by threats, by like, of course, we're going to bomb the crap out of you from our battleships, basically. So it's kind of interesting. Like, they didn't really tell us in school too. Like, that's kind of the history of that. Like, the U.S. is not just the U.S. Obviously, it's a bigger conglomerate of military power, the world power, you know, that went around and just basically enslaved other countries through basically military force, and also through money and debt and banking and that kind of stuff too, which we know about that too. So it's kind of interesting. I just love looking at the history of like what actually went down in the 1900s and what was happening in the world, you know. Well, the U.S. was going around and they were doing this. So you can look into all of this, but you just Google the Great White Fleet and look into how they went to Japan, and Japan was the last holdout, and Japan basically wanted to stay isolated. Japan was its own, like, they didn't want to be involved in our world affairs. They wanted, and they were actually thriving, but the power structures at the time had to go to Japan and had to submit to this world. We're all under like the world domination right now. So it's kind of interesting. So here's another thing that's interesting: the New York Crystal Palace. This is kind of the stuff they were building in the past, you know, and supposedly this. Well, I would say it's pretty accurate. It was destroyed by fire. But even if it's been destroyed, but why do we not build this stuff today? I mean, if they could build it in the 1800s, we could easily, you know, of course we can build it today, but we choose not to, you know, for some reason. So it's just, Go ahead.
It gets into like, right, like a lot of these buildings, they weren't really built in the 1800s, right? Especially something that looks like that is like ancient. You know what I mean? So like they were like sung. So it's almost like we lost those capabilities. You know what I mean? So the more inner work that we do, the more coherence that we come into, the more we each activate what is our unique role to play in the song of creation, literally coming into our unique role in that. Then, you know, we can all start to come together and create these works of art again, right? That like are literally sung into being.
Okay, there's a couple more. And so here's an example. The Broadway Tabernacle. This was in Manhattan. It stood from 1905 to 1969. Now, for some reason, they went ahead and demolished this building. And because I did a video, this is a part of a video from a whole feature I did on architecture that was lost specifically in New York City, pretty much within New York City. I have like hundreds of buildings that you can like go through that were all demolished in New York City, and they're all beautiful buildings, and they're all like from the old world. And it's like, but obviously still some stand, but it's just amazing how many of them were freaking gone, and it's just like it's sad, you know. And it's just, but the reason they gave for this one was they couldn't pay the bills or something. And I'm sure that when they built this thing, they were not worried about the bills and stuff like that. And that's their excuse to say, oh, we couldn't pay the bills. Like, it's not like there's no way. It's just that anyway, it's a convoluted story, but
yeah.
Here's a really interesting one. This was the Windsor Arcade. Now, this was a really beautiful arcade in New York City that supposedly stood for like 10 years only. And then they destroyed it. They put up this office building here. So this is exactly what you're talking about. Like, this is the newer building that has no magic to it, no beauty. Oops. Something's popping up. I just got to get rid of that. Wow. Okay. That has no beauty to it. It's just, they call this brutalism, which meaning this is like it makes you feel like uninspired. Like, and so this is the past right here. This is the building in the past with, it has all these beautiful there's names for all this stuff I don't know at all, like porticos and statues and actually I'll just read you real quick like how they described it, because it was okay. Okay, let me see if I can. It's a beautiful description of it. Okay. Let's see. Okay. All right. Gray commissioned architect Charles I Berg to design the innovative structure. The Drury Void would be transformed by the ebullient three-story Windsor Arcade, reminiscent of the monumental Beaux Arts style structures introduced at the World's Columbian Exhibition in Chicago. The terracotta and iron building featured a colossal portico surmounted by a sculptural group of winged genius, 16 columns 30 feet high and along Fifth Avenue were capped with ornate capitals. Behind a handsome balustrade, a high Mansard roof gently curved away from the cornice. Terracotta ornamentation, olive branches. It's hard to read some of this stuff because it's like really nuanced. But anyway, so this is just how beautiful it was. And basically, there's no good reason why this was demolished. Like at the end, it says basically that, okay, it said they were talking about whether it was profitable. But profitable or not, on November 5th, 1909, the carpet firm of W&J Sloan announced intentions of razing the northern half of the arcade to build its new 8-story headquarters. The arcade managed to survive another year, but in May 1911, wreckers began tearing down northern half of the 10-year-old structure. Can you imagine that? It's literally 10 years old. Like, it's just mind-boggling. Like, because to get all the material here, all that special stuff, like, it doesn't, like, yeah, it's just sad. Like, to make all that beautiful, like, it takes a lot of effort to get all the special iron, the special material. Like, the special stone. I'm sure it's like some stuff from Italy around the world, that came in here. And how they got it there, we don't even know that story, but it's there, right? So, yeah, I think it's part of the old. I think it was built there's no way it was only up for 10 years. I think it was actually built before that.
That's what I think a lot of, right? These are like false histories. So they're saying around for like 10 years, but it's like, we don't know that. But we do know that it's very upsetting, right? That they destroyed all of these beautiful works of art. Like that was a part of what they did, right? Was they destroyed a lot of these ancient libraries, right? And a lot of them looked like that. Like they destroyed a lot of these temples, right? And then every reset, they destroyed a lot of Tartarian, a lot of this stuff. And like with the mud floods, you can also really tell because, right, like the building, it's like, photo. Maybe bring up a photo of a mud flood.
Okay, the mud flood's an interesting topic. I everywhere I go, I talk about this.
Yeah, the mud flood is fascinating.
Someone's commenting. They're saying, I think it's just a matter of knowledge and experience and how to build it. Yeah. So it's kind of like can you hear? Okay.
Yeah.
Someone says, I think we could still build like that. It's just a matter of knowledge and experience and how to build.
Yes, for sure.
Yes. Yeah. So it's like, but that's why I say we don't build like that. We can, but we don't. So, all right.
Yeah.
All right. Mud flooded buildings. Let's see. All right. Here's an example. Taking a second to load. Why does it take so long? Okay. So here's a good example. So you see how, I believe this is the Capitol. So do you see how right there they did excavation, and that had been under the ground for like how many years, right? But that was uncovered, like layers underneath, right? So is that a good example or no? What do you think?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so
buildings
basically all that stuff used to be at ground level. Everything, all those little columns in the middle of the photo right there, that used to be where the ground level was, way below. So I think there was a big deposit of mud, a giant deposit of mud at some point. What do you think the mud flood was? What is your estimation?
Yeah, so basically, in my knowing and what I've seen, like it was basically flooding that occurred, right? And like when you have dirt, you have soil, it creates, right, mud. It's like similar to like what happened in North Carolina with the hurricanes, right? So it's like that. That's kind of what creates it. And then that compost of like kind of like muddy water gets like solidified. Is like what is like really what they did was, right, we know that they're manipulating the weather, right? Like they're using like frequency technology and all this stuff. And they used frequency technology to create flooding, which is kind of interesting when you look at hurricanes and what they're doing with hurricanes. Like, but in some manner, whether it was a hurricane, whether it was torrential rain, whether it was water that was released, there was water that got, flooding in these areas that then got like solidified into the soil. Does that make sense?
Yes. Someone said an accumulation of silt from the deluges. I like that. That's exactly what you just said. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah, that's exactly.
So what's interesting is that when you say it like that, it makes a lot more sense. Like, because we all know that there was a flood. Like most people can acknowledge there was floods on the earth. It's in the Bible. It's like, I mean, that's pretty well, like, it's hard to reject that idea,
Yeah, but we have to look at, right, like a lot of what they did with these resets, it's all on repeat. Like everything that they do, like the true nature of reality is spiral, right? It loops and then it expands. What they do is they create these repetitive timelines, these repetitive resets, right? I just lost my train of thought where I was going. Oh, but so we have to look at what they're doing, right? They're doing frequency warfare, frequency manipulation. They're creating these hurricanes. People think that they released these mass things of water, and I just don't like, you have to look at what they're doing now, because that's probably what they did back then. You know what I mean? So like what we're calling floods was most likely huge hurricanes and huge tsunamis and these huge
Oh yeah.
weather manipulation that they did to create these resets, which, you know, we already know that they're trying to do this in 2030, right? So many people are awakening now, which, you know, it's not going to happen, their reset, but like that's essentially, it's hurricanes and it's flooding of that nature. That's, we think about mud floods and floods as if they like just introduced like a massive flood, because we think about it in the biblical context, right? But it's those floodings had a causation, which was likely hurricanes, tsunamis, mass water manipulation.
That actually, I like the way you put that. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
So here's an example of like, I just stumbled across this this is basically at the bottom of this building is like how it was originally built. You can see the original ground level.
Yes.
And now, I'm not sure if this is the same building, but you see how like the windows are like halfway through the ground? That is the difference between, I don't know if this is the same building they're referencing, but maybe it looks like it is. So basically that shows the two. And this obviously is a sketch, so it's hard to tell if this is like legitimate or not, but I think this is legitimate. If it's just showing what it looked like, you know, if we go back in time. So, but nobody in their right mind builds a halfway window in the ground. Like, you can't tell me that makes any sense. Like, and you can come up with all kinds of explanations, but I'm not buying it until you come up with a good, like, you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
you can tell me all day long, you can tell me that, but I'm like, scratch my head. So anyway, almost done. Okay, a couple, let's see. Tabernacle. Oops. Dates. Okay. Oh, I want to touch on this real quick.
Yeah.
But this was a Clark mansion. So this building, I'm just going to go into how beautiful this was. Okay. 34-room home in Butte. It's in Manhattan, basically. It's Butte was clearly just a practice run for the mansion he commissioned in 1897. Okay, in Fifth Avenue in New York. The house, which included 121 rooms, 31 baths, 4 art galleries, swimming pool, concealed garage, and underground rail line to bring in heating coal, was completed in 1911. Also known as Clark's Folly, the home was considered among the most egregious examples of Gilded Age excess. So this building was called the Clark's Mansion or Clark's Folly because kind of it's folly that it got destroyed. It was built in 1911, supposedly, and then demolished in 1927. Now, it costs on if you put the dollars in today's dollars, $250 million. Now, does that make any sense to you? Like, how could, like, it only stood for like 16 years. They spent $250 million on it, and then they demolished it. Like, it doesn't quite add, history doesn't quite add up in that one. It just, it's one of those stories that, like, it doesn't quite, yeah, you can see right here, completed in 1911, demolished in 1927, cost in 2024 dollars, $236 million. I mean, even who wouldn't want to destroy it, you know, like how beautiful it is, you know?
Yeah.
Just,
well, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to show you some of the pictures of it.
Yeah.
The staircases, I mean, it's the old world style of just like, it's that beautiful. It's, yeah, that's just one of the many hundreds of rooms, you know? So anyway, just stuff to look into. The Clark Mansion. It's pretty impressive. Okay, what did it say? Why was it destroyed? Less than 20 years it was torn down, yeah. It was replaced with the current luxury apartment building. Yeah. I'm sure not as luxurious as that. So,
well, they get destroyed, right? Because they're hiding, like, not to like harp on it, but we don't really know that that's the true history, right? That it was only stood for 16 years. Like, it might have stood for a long time.
yes, no, that's what I was, yeah.
these are just the histories and these false narratives that they give us. You know what I mean? Like, but at the end of the day, I'm sure it was utilized for some type of healing, some type of like energy, conduit. So it's like, yeah, it is really sad that all these buildings get destroyed. But right, a lot of, like I said, they couldn't destroy all of them, right? Because they had to have that code to then invert, and like they didn't know, they had to have something to base to like invert for us, right? Like, and give us a false history. So they couldn't destroy everything, but they did destroy a lot of the buildings and a lot of the temples. A lot of Tartaria, was like targeted, right? But it's like a lot of these things that they tell us like only stood for 10 years, 16 years. Like, they're just stories that likely I can tell you right now that building probably stood for many years. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a lot of, like I said, the narratives that they've given us are also false. So we have to be very careful when we're reading narratives,
Yeah. We're reading it. Like, at this point, when you're reading it, you should be very skeptical of what they're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you also don't discourage you from reading it and thoroughly reading it and thoroughly processing it.
Yes.
This is the last one, and then I was reading someone's comment. Rapid cycling back and forth between golden and iron ages causes weird anomalies. Will calm down, balance out, and wheel of time is rolling and ascending towards the golden age eventually. I like that. Yeah, it's like we're going through cycles, and eventually our trajectory is going, as like I said, enlightened or fully awakened. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we haven't been in like a true Tartaria was like a reemergence. It was like almost to the height of a golden age. Like, we were almost able to switch the realm, but we haven't been in a true golden age since Atlantean times for like thousands of years. So like, yes, we are in another cycle, but we have to understand that like, and yes, like the light has already won, right? Like, we're already restoring it. But we have to understand that this is when they do those resets, when the golden age cycles come up because of the luminaries, right? Because of the energetics that then they utilize to try to amplify their timeline seeding of these negative timelines. So it's like, we have to be aware that when they're trying to do these resets, it's because the energy is so potent for us all to awaken. So yeah, we are emerging into a golden age. Yeah, but yeah, to answer that, absolutely.
All right, so this is a monument to the Battle of Nations, and this is in Germany, Leipzig, Germany, and I actually really want to actually go here in person. I'm thinking about maybe going this year or next year. So the thing about it is it's kind of like a very beautiful monument that's off the tourist path. I was reading some historical, not historical, but reading some Tartarian Reddit posts and stuff about this, and they were saying how like it's not very like on the tourist path. It's like kind of off the beaten path. Like, though it should be like, this is like one of the wonders of the world. I think it's like incredible. So I definitely want to see this in person. It's like 90 meters tall, and it just is just freaking megalithic. It's just, I love this kind of stuff. And you said the domes.
Yeah,
there's definitely some healing going on here. And I mean, look at the size. You can see a person down there, way down there, and then the size of the statue there. And then this is the second level, too.
that's beautiful.
Yeah, and you can go up there at the top and get a view of all the land. So these are the kind of places I like to go to and just sit in the magnificence of the past. Just wow, just be in that holy space.
Yeah.
And, so hopefully I get to go there and document it. And like, you can look at it from pictures on the computer, but it's a whole nother experience to be there. So, yep. That's about it for my presentation. And we got 16 people on, by the way, which is cool. I'm really glad that everyone joined in. All right. Well, thanks for everybody for chatting here in the chat on YouTube. Yep. Thank you so much. And Essie, it was really a pleasure to have you on, and I really enjoyed talking about this nerdy history stuff.
No, No, it's not.
Not a cut nerd. I know.
Yeah, this was great. This was a good talk.
Do you have any final words? Do you want to say anything about anything before we get off here?
I think I'll just give words of, like we're reawakening to this history, right? Like these memories are within us. So like when we come across this architecture, right? Like those memories are inside you guys, and like they're all coming back online. And I'm just excited for, right, we're going into this restoration. So getting excited for us all working together to, right, start to build this new ancient past, ancient past future, all converging.
All right. With that, we'll call it a wrap, and we'll hopefully do something like this again sometime. It's fun. It's really fun.
Yeah, this was really fun. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you guys so much for joining.
Yep. All right. Catch you later.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye. Okay.